Okay. Forever, Amber Gray is the one we just covered. Now we're on Death of Some Salesman. Like I just told you in the previous video, Tim Curry played 3 characters and all amazing. A sleazy, fast-talking traveling salesman played by Ed Begley Jr., who makes a killing selling false cemetery plots, shows up at their door. Sounds interesting, right? If some guy came to your door offering cemetery plots, would you buy it? Neither would I. Without realizing the family has a thing against salesmen, that is one thing. This brought like the horror to a traveling salesman. I mean, there's a shot of some heads in the microwave. You know, all the gore was done up great, and it's done really good. And this episode stands out. To save his hide, he agrees to wed Winona. When he learns of the fortune buried in their cellar, he escapes to the basement while Winona disposes of Ma and Pa, who disapprove of the marriage. After she shows him where the treasure's buried, the young man shoots Winona to get work on digging. Only to find out that, let's just say, what he sells, he just got. Definitely pretty cool. Alright, we're going to jump back to episode 57. This is called People Who Live in Brass Hearses. And this is a classic story of Siamese twins, and the shock ending, or the shock value, was definitely there. Now it stars Bill Paxton and Brad Dourif. Brad Dourif, as you guys well know, voiced the voice for Chucky on the Child's Play films. Except for the new one, Mark Hamill did that. So 2-bit criminal Billy, played by Bill Paxton, guys, plots to break in the safe of an ice cream warehouse where he once worked. And that's the other thing. This guy, Bill Paxton, loves butter. In the show, I mean, he eats sticks of butter, and his favorite ice cream is butternut, guys. So you guys should check it out. Not a healthy diet that I can see, but definitely cool. I wouldn't want to do it. In revenge, he plans to frame the man who put him away, Mr. Bird, played by Michael Lerner. Billy uses his half-wit brother, Virgil, played by Brad Dourif. Oh, Brad Dourif was also on Deadwood as the medic. You guys recognize him. If you don't recognize him from Child's Play, that's who he was. He was the medic on Deadwood. As the front man, but the complications ensure there's no money in the warehouse safe. Bird must have taken it home with him. When the 2 brothers burst in on Bird, they catch him off guard, and Billy blows him away. Shoots him dead in the head. There's a picture of it. I'll show you guys in a minute. Little does he know that Bird has a brother too, a Siamese twin attached to his back. Now, guys, what I'm reading here, you guys can check out that. That's pretty good. That's the gore effects you're going to get when you watch Tales from the Crypt. You ain't going to get no silly putty crap. You're going to get the real stuff. All right. We are going to continue the countdown with Creep Course, episode 61. This has my main man, Anthony Michael Hall, in it. And Jeffrey Jones. Jeffrey Jones was the guy in Transylvania 65000 that I just mentioned. And Nina Semesco. She was in there too. She's pretty hot. A bookish young student reluctantly agrees to assist the class jock, Anthony Michael Hall, so he won't flunk history. Sounds like the plot of every John Hughes movie I ever seen. Despite the intentions of the strict professor, played by Jeffrey Jones, she finds out the extracurricular activities are getting deadlier after her professor and the jock lock her away in the basement tomb to become an offering for a mummy. Little do they know, she knows what to do. She's read the book. She doesn't slack off. She knows how to survive a mummy attack. She charms the bandaged ghoul in the guise of his eternal love, Princess Nephra. Meanwhile, the professor poisons the jock so that the mummy's riches will be all his. But when he goes back to check his handiwork downstairs, the college student flips the table on him and sicks the mummy after him. Now, this has a pretty wicked shot of a brain being pulled out of the nose. Very wild. All right, moving on. You're a John Stamos fan and you're looking for something other than a Full House or Fuller House, or whatever incantation they have on Netflix now, check out an episode called Till Death Do We Part, where he plays a gigolo who's been bought by an aging old woman with the flock of goons at her side at every moment. After she discovers the young man is cheating on her with a pretty young thing, played by Kate Vernon. Some of these people I don't know. She orders him to pull the trigger on the lass out in the woods under her watchful eye. Instead, he blows her away and her henchmen. Then he comes after her and his new love by his side. In a bloody shootout inside a seedy bar, the hapless young man is disheartened to find that the woman has turned on him, or so he perceives. In actuality, he's been fantasizing about what happens if he lets her go. So he does really go through with the deed and blows her head off. Kind of like dreams getting the best of you. This is not no Uncle Jesse type stuff, guys. It's some violent stuff. Now, if you ever read any of the horror stories and the scariest stories you ever heard, you will come across a story, and I don't know the title, but let's just say it mimics this story to a T. This one's called House of Horror, and it has Keith Coogan, Michael DeLuise, Courtney Gaines, Brian Crouch, Jason London, and Will Wheaton, and my wife's favorite actors that she goofs on, Kevin Dillon. Kevin Dillon was in Entourage. You can check him out there. He was also on Platoon. There, you can check him out. He played Johnny, I think Johnny Drama on Entourage. So the cat has a definitely good body of work. This is about fraternity pledges who have to. Pledge night turns into hell night when a mean-spirited president, Wilton, played by Dillon, decides to scare all three pledges out of their wits by sending them on a journey through a supposedly haunted mansion. Along for the ride is a sexy co-ed, played by Meredith Salinger, with an eye on one of the pledges, Will Wheaton. So, again, if you're Big Bang Theory, tired of seeing Professor Proton or whatever he was, you can check this out. When the pitfalls Wheaton has to set up in the house prove to be nothing compared to the possible real-life phantom who might be stalking them, everybody turns on Wilton, and it is his turn to see who's the toughest going up into the attic. So they rig this house with all kinds of traps. And whenever they find out it's a fraud, they tell him to go up in the attic and check out what's really going on. There he is met by a ghastly surprise. Well, what's the odds of sorority sisters being vampire chainsaw-wielding maniacs? Why don't I let you decide? Alright, this next episode is notable again for the gore effects. And it's called Halfway Horrible. And it's about manufacturer Roger Lassen, who's looking for a cure, who buries his friend deep alive in the South American jungle to complete development of a chemical preservative. I believe it's called X-Neon B. Could be wrong, but I've seen these a million times. Check it out, X-Neon B. If I'm not right, then hey, you call me on it. Then he is plagued with guilt over the incident. The preservative will make him a fortune, but he can't seem to get it past FDA regulations. Visions of his dead buddy force him to admit he's having done the deed, only to have his buddy zombified corpse show up and get revenge. Lassen kills his friend once again, this time beheading him. When the mysterious voodoo priestess, played again by Cheech Marin. Yeah, Cheech Marin made a couple, horror films. He did this and he did Dusk Till Dawn, and he was just, that dude that just, if he was near and said he'd do it, But he plays a good voodoo chief. So anyway, he shows up at Lassen's house to offer them the chance to exercise his murderous evil side for good. He readily accepts. But the operation only leaves him being half the man he used to be. Halfway horrible. Definitely check it out. Alright, we're getting into the tail end of Tales from the Crypt. It only lasted, believe it or not, we're on season 6. And it lasted not that long. 7 seasons. Then it became 2 motion pictures. So we're going to bottle this up. I was hoping to do another part, but actually we've covered all the good episodes so far. Now there is a ton more episodes in here, but these are, like I said, the most notable that I can remember, and I've seen them a lot. There's a classic story here. It's episode 68, and it's season 6. It's directed by Mick Garris. Mick Garris helmed the Steven Weber adaptation of The Shining, which I tell people was the lot better version than the Jack Nicholson version, but that's just from me to you. Anyway, it's called Whirlpool, and it has comedian Rita Rudner in it, believe it or not. And this is a Tales from the Crypt story. In fact, it's a very classic one, and it is referenced quite a lot when you start looking these up. She's an artist who becomes trapped in a twisted, repetitive hell, reliving the same events over and over again. First, she goes to the office where her no-nonsense boss, Richard Lewis, there's a name you haven't heard in a while, Richard Lewis, tears her latest story into shreds and then fires her. Then she goes to a bar and gets drunk, only to return late night to ask for a job back and end up shooting her boss. The scenario recurs over and over and over again until, well, leave it up to you. Now we're going to jump down to episode 67 called Only Skin Deep. This story should have been a movie. That's how much I like this story. It's about a chance meeting at a Halloween party. And with Halloween coming up, I think it's an essential viewing. A conceited young man meets up with a strange, sexy woman played by Sherry Rose, who is awesome. And she plays this role to a T. At a masquerade party, they go back to her place to make passionate love, promising her to remain anonymous. So they leave their masks on, which is key in this episode. They leave their masks on. The next morning, he breaks vow, and she becomes enraged. So he takes his mask off, say, hey, this is who I am. She gets mad and tells him to get the hell up out of her house. Straight up. She goes back to bed and tells him not to be around when she gets up. Stumbling around the apartment, he finds a glass case. What's in that case? Well, if I told you, it wouldn't become a surprise. In a fit of rage, he tries to remove her mask, only to find out it's not a mask at all. It's a disfigured face. Classic story, and it just tells you basically the morality issue that if you have something good, don't mess with it, guys. Now, before we go any further, I think I forgot one episode, and it's notable because it stars Michael J. Fox. So give me 1 second, let me find that. All right, guys, we're going to jump back to episode 27 in season 3. This is called The Trap, and it has this all-star cast power. It has Bruno Kirby, Michael J. Fox, Terry Garr, Bruce McGill, and this is a very interesting story when you look back on it now. This was Michael J. Fox in his prime playing a defense lawyer, and it is one of the overlooked segments because upon filming this, guys, Michael J. Fox said that in an interview on HBO a long time ago, he said that, basically he loved this story. This was the one story that got him reading these things. And it really shows you that he can play something other than Alex P. Keaton and his character on Teen Wolf. So Bruce McGill, you guys might know, if you see the episode, he does look very familiar. He's been on a few things. He's like that henchman type guy that you see. But it's about Lou Paloma, who sees a way out of every hole by devising a plan to fake his own death and collect on the insurance. He drags his wife, Irene, played by Terry Garr, and his coroner brother, Billy, into the scheme. So he's got this all figured out. He figured his coroner brother's going to, pronounce him dead. His wife is going to say, hey, look, he's dead. They're going to collect. They're going to move away to an island. They're going to live happy after, right? Wrong. When Irene realizes that Billy is a kinder, gentler man, she and Billy decide to betray Lou. When everybody thinks Lou is dead, Billy and Irene convince him to fly down to Rio, leaving the money behind to make sure that the story sticks. Months later, Lou returns to find himself in trouble. Billy and Irene won't acknowledge Lou is the person he claims to be and is put to death for his own murder. Doesn't say anything about Michael J. Fox, but he plays a hell of a defense attorney or prosecution attorney. And it's worth checking that out just for that alone. So definitely give that a whirl. Another notable episode that we did skip over was Yellow. Same season, and it's done by Robert Zemeckis and I believe produced by Steven Spielberg. And it stars Lance Henriksen, Eric Douglas, Kirk Douglas, Lance Henriksen, and Dan Aykroyd. During World War II, a general's son realizes he can no longer perform on active duty. Deemed cowardly, his father offers him a way out. If he takes charge of one last mission, he will grant his son a transfer. After fear causes him to leave his fellow soldiers open for a massacre, he flees back to the base camp. Nobody believes that he did all he could, and his father has no choice but to sentence him to execution. But are the executioners firing blanks or real bullets? Very notable episode, high star power. Definitely give it a whirl. Yellow. It's a 2-part episode. It was one of the only first hour episodes I think Tales from the Crypt ever did. Alright, guys. Let's see. Season 6, Episode 20, Revenge is the Nuts. This was actually on the Vault of Horror or Tales from the Crypt movie, and I'm not sure which. It is about a group of patients who are in a home for the blind who are treated like crap. Misused, mistreated, beaten, everything. So they decide to get revenge on the owner. Now, in the comic book, they had the owner walk through a tight corridor of razor blades. I'm not sure if that's the case with this. It's been a while since I've seen it. But it's notable because it is classic and it was in the films. Just like in All Through the House was in the actual Tales from the Crypt movie, and it was done. I think Joan Crawford was in that, and it's pretty sweet. All right, let's see. Episode 76 called Surprise Party. This is another cool one. This stars Jake Busey. Jake Busey, again, was in The Hitcher Part 2, I've Been Waiting. And I covered that film the other day. Or a couple reviews ago, not the other day. Just getting my head of myself. After murdering his father to inherit a house that burned down years ago, a young man, played by Adam Stork, arrives to find his house intact and packed with dancing, drunken teenagers. A sexy young siren claims that she really heat things up at the stroke of midnight. True words were never spoken when the girl's jealous boyfriend, Jake Busey, shows up, and the man is forced to kill them both. When he tries to burn them and hide the evidence, he finds he's repeating the deeds of his father, who burnt the place down for the first time. Interesting. Has that whole revelation deal. Episode 78, Comes the Dawn. Now, if you were ever in Alaska, and you were ever out on the cold, blowy, snowy night, and you needed to seek refuge, and you found the first building you came to, would you suspect vampires? Neither would I. An ex-Army colonel and his sergeant buddy are out poaching bear in the wintry wilds of Alaska. They seek the aid of a woman who's the most renowned military hunter, or hunter in the area, not military. And she is played by Vivian Wu. I don't know who she is, but she's pretty cool. While on the hunt, she tries to persuade the sergeant to stiff the colonel instead. The two men decide they don't need the woman anymore and they try to kill her. But she's been leading them on all along, right into the den of dormant and very ravenous vampires. The sergeant shoots and sacrifices the colonel, retreating into the cabin just as the sun is about to come up. But he has forgot one simple detail, guys. And if you've ever been to Alaska, they don't have night and day on a regular schedule like we do. They have darkness for 6 months. They have light for 6 months. I'm going to let you figure out the ending of this story. This next one, number 79, is a pretty neat little story. It's called 99 and 44% Pure Horror. And it's about a self-infatuated artist played by Christy Conway. She was on a few things. I'm not sure if I know anything notable. Is enraged when her pushover soap magnet husband, played by Bruce Davison, informs her that his company has decided her to drop her new logo ad campaign. Willa vows to come up with something new, but nobody is interested. When the last straw comes when Willa learns that her husband's company is going with a graffiti artist for the new campaign. Furious, she bashes her husband's head in, throws him in the soap bar statuette. Or no, she bashes her husband's head in with a soap bar statuette and disposes of his body in a vat of soap that's cooking and cleaning. The idea is she's going to wash him out of her life forever. Problem is that if you know anything about soap, it's based off of acid. Need I say more? It's a pretty cool shower melting scene. 99 and 44% horror. Check it out. Now those are the notable ones. There's a few good ones here guys, but rather than go talk about them, those are probably the best episodes you can see, especially Forever Amber Gray. That thing is awesome. Ease'll Kill You is pretty good. When Carry On Death, you do the math. Now, in 1995, Tales from the Crypt released Demon Knight. And this was supposed to be a very big entry, and it was supposed to actually catapult Tales from the Crypt, not only in the mainstream, but this was also supposed to be the first of many, many movies that Tales from the Crypt produced. Now, it's notable that HBO's Tales from the Crypt wasn't even on the air when this thing was in development. So, it actually was conceived as a rough draft in 1987. And, like I said, one thing after another kind of led the film to be delayed, but it had interesting potential. It was supposed to be a film with Chris Sarandon as a salesman collector and Tommy Lee Jones as Breaker, but went on to make Fatal Beauty, a bomb starring Whoopi Goldberg as a narcotic shop. The next director showed interest was Mary Lambert, who did Pet Sematary, Madonna's music videos. She did Material Girl, Like a Prayer, Like a Virgin, but she ultimately chose to make Pet Sematary 2 instead. When the movie failed at box office, financial backing for her realized that Demon Knight evaporated. So when her films didn't hit big, they evaporated. She was no longer interested, and she was no longer qualified to do the job. So, long story short, Ernest Dickerson stepped up to the helm, and it came out January 13th, guys. And the story was pretty cool. It was actually a giant episode in the Tales from the Crypt entry, and it stars Billy Zane as the Collector, and it shows Walter Hill as Breaker. Walter Hill, or not Walter Hill, William Sadler. I don't know why I said Walter Hill. I think it was directed in part by Walter Hill. But it was a movie about a key containing dark liquid that, put in the right hands, could protect humanity. So, a bunch of motley misfits thrown together in a single location must make it through the night, even if they are besieged by the forces of evil. Is basically the idea of the episode. The forces are led by a suave character known as the Collector, Billy Zane. The Collector is a gatherer of both souls and antiques. His arch rival, a mysterious careworn paladin named Breaker, has something he desperately wants to complete his collection, an ancient mythical amulet. The talisman is a key filled with dark liquid, and the only one of 7 remaining is safe in the hands of the terrestrial side of the river Styx. His satanic majesty's forces hold the other. And Breaker's key is all that stands between the human race and Armageddon, which is where the smart money would be on if some really bad dudes from across the river. Now again, this takes place in New Mexico on a dark, stormy night. Outskirts are all quiet on. The outskirts are real quiet, and it takes place in a town called Wormwood, which is in the middle of the nowhere. The arrival comes with a bang as if it were pedal to the metal car crash chase ending in the fiery crash that destroys both vehicles. What's interesting about this intro shot is that Hey Man, Nice Shot got its theatrical debut with this. And it plays very well, and it just sums up the attitude of that whole car chase. I really liked it. Hey Man, Nice Shot. Check it out. Now on foot, the Collector is still in pursuit. Breaker removes the black leather driving glove, and a real strange symbol is on his right hand. Now pay attention to that symbol when you watch the movie, because it can be passed down from generations. Now I could sit here and cliff note the entire movie for you, but let's just say the Collector decides to attack, and it's up to one savior, and let's see. And it's pretty much a survival movie. It was like Dusk Till Dawn, but not set in a Mexican temple, with some other additive things. Now it did fairly well at the box office, and because of that, they made a sequel called Bordello Blood, which gave Dennis Miller his on-screen debut opposite Angie Everhart and my man Corey Feldman. This thing just basically fell apart because there was no real interest, and it was more black comedy than anything. I liked the film. It was cool, but it wasn't, a good horror hit. It was a moderate horror hit. Check it out. I'm not going to go into it. Then, for 2 years, ABC bought rights to this, but they said, look, we want a cartoon. So they made Tales from the Crypt Keeper, which kept some of the violence in it, but had dumbed it down for children, for cartoon use. And it basically faded away as parents sort of, I don't know. They took the Crypt Keeper and dumbed him down to a G-rated version. They actually had a game show called Secrets of the Crypt Keepers Haunted House, a new game show in which young contestants face challenges such as the incredible shrinking room and the swamp from hell. Huh. Must have been a PC game. But again, the morality was there. You can look them up. I actually have some of the episodes of Tales from the Crypt Keeper. Never watched them. But I don't know. And if you do have an original copy of the early Tales from the Crypt, at the time of this publication I'm reading, it was worth $1,500, a $5,000 or $15,000% return on a 10% investment. So definitely check it out. But people always want to know what happened with Tales from the Crypt. Well, since you stuck with my countdown, I'm going to let you know. In 1950, William Gaines came up with the idea for horror comics. He made 3 of them: The Haunt of Fear, The Tales from the Crypt, and The Vault of Horror. What happened was they sold like hotcakes, and then controversy hit. Parents started getting mad, and basically they were burned at the stake, and you can read about it, the 1950s comic book controversy. And out of the ashes of all that controversy came Mad Magazine, ladies and gentlemen. And then what happened is that when Mad Magazine hit, other titles hit. Weird Science hit. Weird Science was actually a magazine. You know, there was a couple other ones, sci-fi related. And then popular demand came back and people wanted Tales from the Crypt back. They wanted that. And I remember seeing that on Walden Books, comic book shelves. They had a nice little turnstile deal. And some of the artwork was removed. There was an episode or a cover with a zombie with a meat cleaver in his head that was removed. Censorship. And then that's what sparked the HBO show and everything else. But read about the 1950s comic controversy. And they did some pretty interesting stuff. And it rivals some of the controversies held today. So definitely look that up. If you're a historian or you just want to know more about why these comics were censored, it was ridiculous. Again, it was basically parents thinking the comics were too violent and this and that. I hope I provided you with an insight of some of the favorite episodes of Tales from the Crypt. I will try to add those all to the YouTube page, but I can't promise anything. I'll share them with you if I find them. But definitely give them a whirl. And with Halloween coming up, I think they are required viewing. It's GW. Hope you got informed. See you later. And by the way, hit like down there if you picked up something you like. Just hit it. Hit it a bunch of times. Who cares?